My dad left his fortune to his biological children. My golden child brother didn't know he was the affair baby. I was sitting in my father's lawyer's office watching my brother Kyle smirk at me from across the mahogany table when the attorney opened the will and said, "To my son Kyle, I need you to know that I've always known about your mother's affair." Kyle's smirk died instantly, his face went white as paper, and my mother let out a sound like a wounded animal before the lawyer even got to the part about the DNA test that would destroy everything my brother thought he knew about himself. That was 10 minutes ago. Now Kyle is screaming, my mother is sobbing, and I'm sitting here trying to process the fact that my father, the man who barely acknowledged my existence for 30 years, just made me the sole heir to his $14 million estate because of a secret he'd been keeping since before I was born. But let me back up, because this story doesn't start in a lawyer's office. It starts with a funeral, a golden child, and a black sheep who everyone assumed would get nothing. My father, Richard Donovan, died last Tuesday at 73. Heart attack. Quick and clean, which is more mercy than he showed most people in his life. He was a real estate developer, self-made millionaire, the kind of man who valued success above everything else. Including his kids. I'm Jake. 32. The family disappointment. I'm a high school art teacher making $45,000 a year. I have tattoos. I rent an apartment. I didn't go to business school like my father wanted. I'm everything Richard Donovan considered a failure. Kyle is 35. MBA from Wharton. VP at Dad's company. Drives a BMW. Married to a woman who looks like she walked out of a country club catalog. He's been groomed since birth to take over the empire. The golden child. The favorite. The son who did everything right. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect. Expensive. Tasteful. Full of people in designer suits talking about what a visionary Richard was. Kyle gave the eulogy, talking about Dad's legacy, his brilliance, his dedication to family. I sat in the back row and said nothing. At the reception, Kyle pulled me aside. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and he had this look on his face, pity mixed with superiority. "Jake, I know things have been tough between you and Dad," he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "But I want you to know, when the will gets sorted out, I'll make sure you're taken care of. Maybe set you up with a trust fund or something. Nothing crazy, but enough so you don't have to worry." The condescension dripped off every word. Like I was some charity case he was generously deciding to help. "That's real thoughtful of you, Kyle," I said flatly. "I mean it." He squeezed my shoulder. "We're brothers. Dad might not have left you much, or anything, honestly, but I'm not going to let you struggle. I'll give you, I don't know, maybe 50,000. That should help, right? 50,000. Out of an estate worth at least 14 million. And he said it like he was being generous. "Sure, Kyle," I said. "Thanks." He smiled, satisfied that he'd done his brotherly duty, and walked away to talk to some executive from the company. I watched him go, watched him shake hands and accept condolences with that easy confidence that came from never doubting his place in the world. I'd spent my whole life being compared to Kyle. Coming up short. Not ambitious enough. Not driven enough. Not enough like Dad. My mother, Victoria, had made it clear from the time I was a kid that Kyle was special and I was the accident that came along 3 years later and never quite measured up. The will reading was scheduled for today at 2 p.m. Kyle showed up early, 15 minutes before the appointment, wearing another expensive suit. Mom was there too, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the grieving widow even though everyone knew she and Dad had barely tolerated each other for the last decade. I showed up in jeans and a button-down. Kyle looked at my outfit and actually laughed. "Couldn't dress up for Dad's will reading?" he asked. "Didn't see the point," I said. "Right. Well, this shouldn't take long." Kyle settled into his chair like he owned the place. "Pretty straightforward. I get the company, the houses, the investments. Mom gets her survivor benefits. You probably get some personal items or maybe a small cash gift. That's what you think? I asked. That's what I know, Kyle said confidently. Dad and I talked about this years ago. He wanted the business to stay in the family, with someone who understood it. No offense, Jake, but that's not you. The lawyer, Gerald Hutchins, walked in at 2 p.m. exactly. He was 70, silver-haired, and had been Dad's attorney for 30 years. He nodded at us, sat down, and pulled out a thick folder. Thank you all for coming, Hutchins said. I know this is a difficult time. Richard's will is complex. And there are some attached documents that need to be addressed. I'm going to read the will in full, and then we'll discuss the implications. Kyle leaned back, completely relaxed. Mom clutched her handkerchief. I just waited. Hutchins opened the folder and began reading. The first part was standard: funeral arrangements, charitable donations, some personal items. Then he got to the meat of it. To my wife, Victoria, Hutchins read, I leave the house in Palm Springs and a one-time payment of $500,000. This is in addition to the prenuptial agreement she signed in 1987, which remains in full effect. Mom's face tightened but she nodded. $500,000 was more than most people got, but it was pocket change compared to Dad's full estate. To my son, Kyle, Hutchins continued, and Kyle sat up straighter, I need you to know that I've always known about your mother's affair. I've known since before you were born that you are not my biological son. The room went silent. Like someone had sucked all the air out. Kyle's face went from confident to confused to horrified in about 3 seconds. What? Kyle whispered. Hutchins didn't stop reading. I had a DNA test done when you were 6 months old. Victoria thought I didn't know, but I've always known. You are the biological son of Thomas Brennan, Victoria's tennis instructor. I raised you anyway, because I am not a cruel man, but I want you to understand that my estate goes to my biological children only. That's not true. Kyle shouted, standing up so fast his chair fell backward. That's a lie. Mom, tell him it's a lie. Mom was crying now, real tears, her face buried in her hands. She didn't say anything. Didn't deny it. And that silence was all the confirmation Kyle needed. The heat rose in my neck and my vision went blurry watching my brother's world collapse. Part of me felt sorry for him. But a bigger part, the part that had spent 30 years being treated like the family embarrassment, felt something darker. Satisfaction, maybe. Vindication. There must be a mistake, Kyle said, his voice shaking. Dad wouldn't, he raised me. He made me VP. He was grooming me to take over. He was using you, Hutchins said quietly. Richard told me years ago that he kept you in the company because you were competent and loyal, not because you were his son. He never planned to leave you the inheritance. Kyle looked at me, wild-eyed. Did you know? Did you know about this? No, I said honestly. I had no idea. This is insane. Kyle screamed. You can't just, he can't do this. I'll contest it. I'll sue. You can try, Hutchins said calmly. But the DNA evidence is irrefutable. Richard had testing done through a court-certified lab. The results are attached to the will. You are not his biological son, Kyle. And according to the terms of this document, you receive nothing from the estate. Kyle sat down hard, like his legs had given out. Mom was still crying, mascara running down her face. And Hutchins wasn't done. To my son Jake, the lawyer read, and suddenly I was paying much closer attention, I need you to understand something. I know you're not my biological son either. The floor dropped out from under me. What? I heard myself say. I had your DNA tested as well, Hutchins continued reading my father's words. You are the biological son of Marcus Chen, Victoria's colleague from the marketing firm where she worked in 1991. She had 2 affairs, Jake. 2 sons from 2 different men. And I've known about both for your entire lives. I felt like I was underwater. Everything was muffled and distant. My mother had had 2 affairs. I wasn't Richard's son either. Then why the hell was I sitting in this office? Kyle started laughing, this hysterical, broken sound. Oh, this is perfect. Neither of us is his. So the whole estate goes to charity or the state or... Wait, it gets worse. However, Hutchins interrupted, still reading, there is one crucial difference between Jake and Kyle. 20 years ago, when Jake was 12, I legally adopted him. The paperwork is filed with the state of California. Jake Donovan is my legal son in every way that matters. Kyle Donovan is not. Silence. Complete, total silence. What? Kyle whispered. Therefore, Hutchins read, my entire estate, including all real property, business interests, investments, and liquid assets, goes to my legally adopted son, Jake Donovan. He is my only legal heir. Kyle receives nothing. Victoria receives only what is stipulated above. Jake gets everything else. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My father had known I wasn't his biological son, had known since I was born, and he'd adopted me anyway. Secretly. Without ever telling me. That's impossible, Kyle said. He would have told me. We talked about the business, about succession planning. He lied to you, Hutchins said simply. Richard wanted you to work hard, to prove yourself, because he knew if you thought you'd inherit automatically you'd get complacent. He used you, Kyle. And when it came time to actually pass on his legacy, he chose Jake. Kyle turned to me, his face purple with rage. You knew. You had to have known. This whole time, playing the loser, the disappointment, it was an act. I didn't know, I said, and my voice sounded far away. I swear to God, Kyle, I had no idea. Liar. Kyle lunged across the table at me. Hutchins hit a button under his desk and 2 security guards came in immediately, pulling Kyle back. He was screaming, thrashing, completely out of control. You're nobody. You're a teacher making nothing. You don't deserve his money. You don't deserve anything. The guards escorted him out of the office. His screams echoed down the hallway until a door slammed and cut them off. Mom just sat there, broken, her perfect facade shattered into a million pieces. Victoria, Hutchins said quietly, I think you should leave now. She looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. He knew. All these years, Richard knew. Yes, Hutchins said. He knew everything. The affairs, the lies, all of it. And he made his choices accordingly. But why? Mom whispered. Why adopt Jake and not Kyle? Why keep us all in the dark? I think, Hutchins said carefully, Richard wanted to punish you. For the betrayal. For the lies. He could have divorced you, exposed you, but instead he decided to wait. To let you think everything was fine. To let Kyle think he was the golden child. And then, when he died, he'd reveal the truth and destroy the illusion you'd both been living in. Mom stood up unsteadily and walked out without another word. I sat there, numb, trying to process what had just happened. Hutchins pulled out another folder, this one thinner. Jake, I need you to sign some documents. Transfer paperwork, tax forms, that kind of thing. But essentially, as of today, you own Donovan Properties and all its subsidiary companies. You own the house in Brentwood, the condo in Manhattan, the beach house in Malibu. You have controlling interest in about $8 million worth of real estate investments and another $6 million in stocks and bonds. Why? I asked. Why did he adopt me and not Kyle? Hutchins leaned back in his chair. Your father told me something once, about 15 years ago. He said Kyle was Victoria's son, her ambition, her pride, her need for perfection. But you? You were different. You didn't want his money or his business. You made your own path. And Richard respected that, even if he never told you. He said you were the only honest thing in a house full of lies. He never said any of this to me, I said. He barely talked to me my whole life. I know, Hutchins said. And I think that was part of his pathology. Richard was a complicated man. Brilliant, ruthless, and deeply damaged by your mother's betrayal. He couldn't forgive her, couldn't forgive the affairs, but he also couldn't walk away. So he built this trap. This long game that would only pay off after he died. He used all of us, I said quietly. Yes, Hutchins agreed. He did. The question is, what are you going to do now? I signed the papers in a daze. Hutchins walked me through everything, the business structure, the asset breakdown, the tax implications. It was overwhelming. Yesterday I was a high school teacher with $4,300 in savings. Today I was worth $14 million. I left the office at 4:30 p.m. My phone was blowing up with texts from Kyle. Threats, insults, pleading messages begging me to do the right thing and split the inheritance. I blocked his number. Mom called twice. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to my apartment, sat on my couch, and stared at the wall for 2 hours trying to figure out how I felt about any of this. My father had known I wasn't his biological son. Had known since I was born. But instead of rejecting me like he rejected Kyle, he'd secretly adopted me. Made me his legal heir. Cut out the golden child and gave everything to the black sheep. Why? I pulled out the folder Hutchins had given me. Inside was a letter, sealed in an envelope with my name on it. To be opened after the will reading, written in Dad's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Jake, it read, if you're reading this, I'm dead and you've just learned some hard truths about your family. I'm sorry for the way I handled this. I should have told you years ago, but I'm a coward and a bastard and I couldn't bring myself to have that conversation. The truth is, I knew about your mother's affairs before you were born. Both of them. Marcus Chen was a good man, better than me in a lot of ways. When Victoria got pregnant with you, I knew you probably weren't mine. I had the test done when you were 6 months old. Confirmed it. I could have left then. Should have. But I stayed, partly because I'm Catholic and divorce wasn't an option, and partly because I wanted to punish Victoria for what she'd done. Keeping the family together, watching her live in fear that I'd expose her, it gave me a sick kind of satisfaction. Kyle was already showing signs of being exactly like his mother, ambitious, image-obsessed, willing to do anything to get ahead. I raised him, but I never loved him. How could I? Every time I looked at him I saw Thomas Brennan and Victoria's betrayal. But you were different. You didn't care about impressing me. You didn't want my approval or my money. You became a teacher because you wanted to help kids, not because it would make you rich. You have integrity, Jake. Something rare in this family. That's why I adopted you when you were 12. I did it quietly, through a lawyer, without telling anyone. I wanted you to be mine legally, even if you weren't biologically. Because out of everyone in this house full of lies and manipulation, you were the only one who was genuinely good. I know I was a terrible father to you. Distant. Critical. I focused all my attention on Kyle because I was grooming him to run the company, and I ignored you because I didn't know how to connect with the one person in my life who deserved my love. That was my failure. My regret. The money is yours now. All of it. Do something good with it. Be better than I was. And know that even though I never said it, I was proud of you. Not for being successful or ambitious, but for being kind in a family that valued everything else. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you this while I was alive. I'm sorry for a lot of things. But I hope this makes up for it, at least a little. Your father, Richard. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. My hands were shaking and my vision was blurry and I realized I was crying. For the first time since Dad died, I was actually crying. Not because I'd inherited millions. But because my father had loved me in his own broken, twisted way, and I'd never known it. The next few weeks were chaos. Kyle hired a lawyer and tried to contest the will. Claimed undue influence, mental incompetence, fraud. It went nowhere. The adoption papers were solid, the DNA tests were irrefutable, and Dad's mental state had been documented by multiple doctors right up until his death. Mom tried to play the victim. Told the extended family that Richard had been cruel, manipulative, that he'd orchestrated this whole thing to punish her. She wasn't wrong, but she also conveniently left out the part about having 2 affairs and lying about paternity for 35 years. I sold the Brentwood house, couldn't stand living in that place full of memories and secrets. Kept the beach house in Malibu because it was beautiful and Dad had actually been happy there. I set up a trust fund for any future kids I might have. Donated $2 million to educational charities. As for the business, I hired a CEO to run it. Someone competent and experienced who actually knew what they were doing. I kept oversight, made major decisions, but I wasn't going to pretend to be something I wasn't. Kyle sent me one final email 6 months after the will reading. You stole my life. Everything I worked for, everything I built, you took it because Dad decided to play God. You don't deserve any of it. You're still the loser who teaches finger painting to teenagers. Money doesn't change that. I deleted it without responding. Because Kyle was right about one thing, money doesn't change who you are. I'm still a teacher. Still have the same values, the same priorities. The only difference is now I can pay off my student loans and maybe buy a house someday. As for whether I deserve Dad's inheritance, I don't know. I didn't earn it. I didn't work for it. I just happened to be the son who didn't want anything from him, and that made me the only one he could trust with everything. So tell me, was my father a mastermind who pulled off the ultimate revenge against his cheating wife and entitled golden child, or was he a cruel manipulator who weaponized his death to destroy his family? And what about me, am I the villain for accepting an inheritance I didn't earn, or am I just the lucky bastard who happened to be honest in a house full of liars?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.